So you have to be careful what you listen to. It is important that you listen to good stuff, and the stuff you put in usually is the stuff that eventually comes out.
Mentorship, by definition, is the guidance provided by someone who is highly experienced. As entrepreneurs, finding a mentor is key to success. They have walked this path, they have lived this life, and they can provide insights and guidance as you are navigating your entrepreneurial journey. On this first episode of the 2025 Season 4 of GSD Factor podcast, I'm excited to have a father-son combo that has lived out mentorship and lived out entrepreneurship. It's a full circle moment for me because Eric, the dad, was mentored by my own late father, Ted Blameyer. We're going to dive into conversations around entrepreneurship, around mentorship, more importantly, familial mentorship. I was mentored by my own father in the business world. Eric was mentored by my dad, as well as being mentored by his own father. And now he's mentoring his son. Join us for this fun conversation where we dive in and reminisce about how we were mentored, how we are being mentored, and how we are mentoring that next generation of entrepreneurs. This season's podcast, the focus is going to be stepping into your extraordinary. And so what better way to start off with the conversation around mentorship and entrepreneurship? Let's dive into the conversation with Eric Nordhoff and Kaden Nordhoff. Today's episode, I'm so excited to have Eric Nordhoff and Kaden Nordhoff. Hi guys, how are you?
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hey, Misha, it's so good to be with you.
So, Eric, we are going to talk about entrepreneurship and mentorship, and Kaden, love having you part of this conversation too, and our unique family histories. But before we get started, Eric, just share a little bit about your story with our listeners today, and then Kaden, I'll let you take it from there.
Well, I don't want to go back too far, but I moved to Nashville in the 90s and started working in the music industry. And during that time, we won't talk too much, but it was while I was working in the music industry that I met your father, Misha, and he actually became a mentor of mine working in the music industry. I was in international sales at another company. We played golf together. He was with Word Entertainment. I was with another company, and we played golf. He said to me later that it felt like that he was a father figure to me, and I felt the same way. He was a father figure to me for sure, and we just connected. We worked together. I had the privilege and honor of working with your father for a few years until he retired. And then I took over from him, and everything went downhill after that once I took over. No, just kidding. The music industry definitely changed, and I moved on and started working in podcasting. I actually started several podcasts. A couple of them were really successful in building communities. One of them was a very large entity called the Walker Stalkers or Walker Stalkers podcast. And it was actually a fan podcast for fans of The Walking Dead, which then turned into some very large conventions, of which Kaden was at several of them as a young boy. And we had a lot of fun with that. I ended up selling my half of that business on and have coached others in podcasting and online marketing. I learned a lot about developing marketing funnels, digital marketing funnels, that sort of thing. And that's kind of what I've been doing ever since, is helping people start, launch, develop their podcasts, market their podcasts, really market their brands at the end of the day to make it more successful and appealing, and how to build communities from that brand. And that's kind of my unique approach at this stage in my career.
And what's fun now is you are mentoring me in my own podcast. And so I love the first the full circle event. All right,
It's been a lot
Kaden.
of fun. Yep.
Yes. Kaden, share a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So grew up Franklin, Tennessee,
Mhm.
with the best parents in the world, and
I'm slipping you a 20 while you say that.
yep, and been doing sports my whole life. Just graduated from Trevecca in May with a degree in entrepreneurship. And yeah, just trying to get my career started here. Right now I'm working as a server at the Grove and trying to gain some good experience there before I start my career. So yeah.
And you've been editing this
and
last season of the podcast.
and I have been editing for Misha. So that's been fun and it's been great. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, and what's really fun about this too now is that your dad and I are kind of mentoring you as relates to, editing and producing, and you've done a fantastic job. My husband was happy to hand over those reins. And that's been, again, another really full circle moment. So, again, thank you both for being here. And I think what's really fun about stepping into your extraordinary this season, as we talk about this with all of our guests, number one, we're going to have a lot of entrepreneurs this season, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
But second of all, we're also going to be talking a lot about mentorship. And I think I think the most successful people in this world have been the recipients of amazing mentorship. And I think a lot of people out there are also being amazing mentors. And so, Eric, I want us to kind of dive into this idea of, as we are mentoring this next generation, but also let's talk about what does it mean that maybe that familial mentorship, right? Between you and Kaden, my dad certainly mentored me in the business world, taking me to lots of events and exposing me to networking and sales and telling the story at a very early age. And I talk about that in my book, right? I talk about going to the Frankfurt Publishing Book Fair at the age of 9, right? And having to, I remember Dad made me read all of the new children's books, and then I had to create little, speaking cards on each one, and then I had to work the floor, and I had to, go around and meet everyone. But I think that there's this sense for those of us who mentor and then who have children that are entrepreneurial leaning, as I do with RC, around what does that familial unit look like when you in that mentorship within a family.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so cool that you got to do that with your dad in my home country of Germany. You got to go do that. Of course, he was head of international sales, and what a great opportunity for you. You just can't speak enough about the value of at an early age, because that is where those seeds are planted probably deepest is if you can mentor your kids and just be with your kids. I think it really has such a natural way that we are wired. If you kind of go back to the way we as humans have evolved, for hundreds of years, we had farmers, right? And the farmers would take their kids out and put them to work when they were really, really young. And they learned by, first of all, making a lot of mistakes when they're young, but they also learn just by watching and observing. I think it just goes without saying that it's so valuable to just bring your kids along and expose them to stuff that you're doing. And the kids don't even maybe even realize it. I know that when Kaden came to Walker Stalkers as a kid, or even when he would volunteer at events or just contribute in whatever ways that we had him contributing, he caught that stuff. And I think we catch stuff deepest when we are youngest. I can certainly speak to that, even though I was, in my mid to late 20s when I met your father. I was still young enough to catch a lot of those things, and the things that he did. It wasn't even necessarily, we make the mistake thinking that it's what we say and our words matter. I don't think it's our words that matter more. I think it's our actions, our way of being, as fathers, like the touch, and just the experiences we have. It's very multidimensional. It's not just verbal, although that is a part of it. It's so much more than that. And I think that's the benefit of mentoring in a family environment, in a familial environment, like you said.
Kaden, what is the most prominent thing you have learned by observing and watching your dad over these years?
So I would say just the main things that I've learned from watching him would be, first, just like he's just like a grinder, and he finds ways to he just finds ways to succeed, and he's very optimistic. And another thing would be just like the way that he speaks and the way that he talks with people. He's very I think it comes from him reading Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends, and among other books, listening to Dave Ramsey, and all the things. But yeah, just his work ethic and his creative ability to work around things, and just like watching him, even when I was a kid, him just like helping him with that business, and just seeing that, you can really do anything you want if you set your mind to it, sort of mindset.
Awesome. So in the spirit of mentorship, we just paused, and Eric and Kaden, again, who are mentoring me, and my producer, just went ahead and mentored me in changing all my settings, because it's been a while since I've recorded. So if you hear a slight difference, that's why, because now we're really jamming now. So here we go.
That's right. Here we go. Full speed.
Getting shit done. So I love this idea of the familial mentorship piece. But I really also want to talk about, Eric, you and I have both had careers in what I'll call the corporate space, and now shifting over and as entrepreneurs. Talk about why entrepreneurship and why you have kind of gone down that path and have continued successfully to go down that path, because I think we have a lot of listeners that are either thinking about entrepreneurship or are wanting to do it. Maybe they are in that corporate setting and needing to pivot out. So let's talk about what that was like for you and why entrepreneurship now. And then would love to get Kaden's thoughts about why he chose entrepreneurship as his major. So Eric, to you first.
Okay. Yeah. I started working in the corporate world, and that was really, really good for me. I made learned foundational skills, made observations that caused me to put two and two together and realize that there was something in me that needed to create something. And I felt constricted in the corporate space. They wanted me to walk in a certain lane. They wanted me to focus on this product in order to grow something for their bottom line. And that's great. And I think there's some real value in learning those foundational skills and talents and developing yourself in that way. But I felt very much like I was hitting a ceiling pretty quickly. And I had this deeper desire to create something that I could say was my own. Maybe that's because I'm wired to be a creator. I'm wired to do creative things. I'm somebody that some people have called me more of a pioneer. And it's based on feedback when I was, in my late 20s, early 30s. I remember I was 33 when I ventured out into my own business, Go Global Entertainment, like Kaden was mentioning. I was 33. Kaden was 3 years old when I started, and it was a significant moment for me. So he's only seen me as an entrepreneur. And so I knew I had to do it. It was just something in me that over time I realized my skills could be better used creating something that I could 100% own. I think it was also the influence of books like The 4-Hour Workweek really influenced me. Books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and books like that. How to Win Friends and Influence People that Kaden mentioned. All of those things, you read that content and you can never go back. Once the Pandora's box is opened, you cannot put it back in. So there was no other path for me other than entrepreneurship.
So Kaden, you grew up with entrepreneur dad. What caused you to say, I want to go and learn and study entrepreneurship? Because I think what's unique here is that, many entrepreneurs don't have that degree in entrepreneurship, but now you do. So talk us through that mindset.
Yeah. So obviously going into college, I don't know. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to play soccer in school, so I knew that. But yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like a natural major to choose because I've grown up around, entrepreneurs, and I'm very creative as well. So I thought, that it would be a good degree, and it covers a lot. Entrepreneurship degree, like you get finance, you get management, you get marketing. So you get like a good spread of learning all about business. That's the main reason why I chose it. And even just going into the business world, I feel like I can do a whole lot more. Although it's been rougher, accounting majors, I guess, have like a straight path. As for me, I kind of have to find my own way and my own path. So it's been good, trying to find my way, and I think I can definitely use it to my advantage for sure.
I think what it's probably given you is that foundation and that taste of here's all the different areas that is out there in the business world. And as you now are exploring kind of that sales and marketing path, you still have that understanding of product and finance and strategy and all those different things. And so as you zig and zag through your career, you're going to still have that sense and understanding versus those that have had that straight path, right? Depending on what their careers are. So I commend you for not exactly knowing, but still doing something and still learning and absorbing and getting yourself out there in those different ways, because you're not going to know until you try. I mean, I kind of compare it to my own tiny humans with their sports. They've been trying lots of different sports over their lives just to figure out, what is their passion, what brings them joy. And RC has kind of landed on softball, but this season she did flag football and she has loved it. I think she was channeling her Papa Teddy because she was playing a lot of quarterback and doing some nice spirals. But my little one, he's not quite sure yet, right? But you just let them try lots of different things. And I think that's the biggest thing I try to say with my mentees, whether it's my high school mentees, my college mentees, is just try. You're going to zig and you're going to zag and you're going to see what works and what doesn't work, but we're still learning from all these experiences. And it's just giving you that next stepping stone. Eric, I love how you talked about the various books that you've read. And I think one of my favorite memories of Dad was, A, there was always lots of book reading, but B, there was lots of cassette tape listening.
Yes.
Listeners, cassette tapes. Cassette tape listening in the car to swim meets or dance camps, wherever we were going to. And the likes of Zig Ziglar and Steve Covey and, certainly all the greats. And I have one really funny memory with one of my cousins, and dad had sent him, and if you think about it, back in the 80s and 90s, right? Like it was a big 8.5 by 11 and would have 8 or 12 cassette tapes, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you would listen to it in the car. And my cousin talked about how he got a speeding ticket while he was listening to Zig Ziglar because he was so motivated and so into it. He completely forgot.
Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to sell everything.
Exactly. But I think I remember being in the car, going wherever we needed to go, and Dad would put on the cassette tapes, and my sister and I would sit there and go, really? We can't listen to music. We can't.
Mhm.
And
Nope.
looking
And he worked
back,
in the music industry.
exactly. So, but I think it was that exposure at an early age.
Yeah.
And I think now, fast forward a lot of years, we now have podcasts and we now have YouTube and we have all these different things. But I still think that need and necessity for education and input and being inquisitive and learning from the John Maxwells and learning from certainly all the greats out there is still so important, don't you
Yeah.
think?
Oh my gosh, no doubt. It's so funny while you were talking, I thought of several things. First of all, my father introduced me to audiobooks on tape, books on tape, books on CD. I still have them because they were so impactful to me back then in the 80s when my father introduced me to them. I would listen to Brian Tracy. It was all about sales success. I remember listening to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I remember listening to a Rick Pitino book on cassette. Zig Ziglar, of course. I always thought Zig was so interesting because he had such a Southern accent. I couldn't quite relate to Zig back in the day, but I grew an appreciation. I remember another author. I'm blanking on his first name, but his last name was Brown, and he was super, super impactful to me as well, especially after college. I remember listening to him, and he influenced me a lot. Just listening to those books on tape. Now, I also love music, but I will say the reason I listen so heavily to podcasts today and the reason I love podcasts is because they have the ability to get into your ear and influence you on a long-term basis over a long period of time. It's long-form influence, way different than social media is because that's just kind of a short-term thing. This is something that goes deeper and I think much more richly into your brain and can really change the brain chemistry. So you have to be careful what you listen to. It is important that you listen to good stuff, and the stuff you put in usually is the stuff that eventually comes out. And so that's really, really important. And one last thing, you mentioned flag football, that your daughter's playing that. Well, full circle moment for us too. I coached the boys in flag football when they were little. They played together on the same team for several years. And now my sister-in-law asked us to coach her son, who's 8 years old, in flag football, and we've been coaching together. The boys have led. I've been kind of an assistant coach, but it's been so fun, full circle, to come back and do this together with them now. Both our boys. Ted used to call Alex Big Al, and it's just sweet to do it again and see that happen. We're a terrible team, but we are having a good time, aren't we?
Yep, the best time.
Well, so RC is on the only all-girls team this
Oh, wow.
season.
Okay.
And she said, it was funny you talk about that, entrepreneurial mindset, right? So RC's book came out, in the fall, and she goes, "Well, Mom, we're really activating our confidence and our resilience this season."
Yes. I might need to have her come speak to our team, to our boys.
Exactly.
You need it.
What I appreciate, all of the books that you have talked about, you listened to, you read, the one that I still remember these conversations with Dad was Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Right? I
Mhm.
still have it.
Yep.
And How Full Is Your Bucket?
Mhm.
And so those two have stuck with me, but I for some reason I remember those particular conversations with Dad the most around, you have to Kaden, to your point, you got to pivot, right? You have to, whether someone else is moving the cheese or whether you are moving the cheese or whether life is just moving your cheese, you got to be able to move with it and adapt and zigzag and pivot. And I think that that's really important for people to embrace, especially if they have, and especially if they have that, oh, this is the plan to go out. But, being willing to go, okay, I've got to move with the cheese, right? And I think that that's what you're doing now, is saying, all right, I have this entrepreneurial foundation, but now I'm going to follow the cheese.
Exactly.
You've not read
What
that
is this
book.
cheese? What
Oh
type
my
of
goodness.
cheese is this?
It's a long story, but basically the concept is these mice are used to this cheese always being there when they come out. And one day the cheese has been moved. It's not there anymore. And it's following I think it's following the journey of these mice, like finding new paths to getting to the cheese, or that maybe the cheese is now moved and you have to adapt.
Sure.
Which I think you're actually really good at.
Adapting and changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Pivoting.
Pivoting.
Yep. Pivoting. That's right. So I love the kind of memory lane moments that we've been able to have. And Eric, as you think about, so the cassette tapes, the books read, did you ever attend any of those conferences back in the 80s and 90s, right? So Dad would take us to the success seminars. Do you remember those?
Yes. I went with him on several of those. Yes. Those were great. I love those. My dad took me he sent me when I was 16, he sent me for 12 weeks to a Dale Carnegie curriculum. Every Thursday night, I'd go from 6:30 till 9:00. He would drop me off and pick me up. And I went with a bunch of like old adults that were in there. I thought maybe they were probably in their 30s and 40s, and they were learning how to public speak. They were learning how to speak in public and deal with other people and improve in that area. It was kind of like Toastmasters, I guess. But it was so interesting because I was the youngest, and of course it was nice to stand out as this young 16-year-old. But I remember how scared the adults were, and it made me, I guess, more confident to know that, okay, I'm getting a little bit of a head start to these folks who are, 20 years ahead of me in life. And it was a really impactful 12 weeks that I did that. And actually, that's probably one of the things I wish I had sent Kaden and Alex to, was a Dale Carnegie public speaking and human effectiveness class, which they still do those today. And it was just really, really, really good for me. But I also can remember that when I was failing in school, or I was getting a C- or a D in school after my third semester in school, it was halfway through my sophomore year. I remember my father sitting me down saying, "This is unacceptable. I'm not going to pay for school if you're going to be doing so badly." I was partying too much and wasting a lot of time. And he sent me to a Franklin Planner course for over Christmas break. I learned how to use a Franklin Planner, how to organize my life. And it was a tremendous difference. From that point on, I got on the dean's list. I was an A, B student just because I got myself organized and I learned how to use that planner to my benefit. I could look at the syllabus ahead of time and plan ahead. And it just gave me some really foundational things. So I credit my father to helping me in times when he knew I needed it. So grateful to have those experiences. And yes, I've never been to like a big Tony Robbins event or anything like that, but I've been to those success seminars where you had multiple speakers, big time speakers. Those were always really impactful and funny to me as well, in some ways,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I got to hear my big memory of the success seminars was that, my sister and I were definitely the only kids in that room, or I should say in the old municipal auditorium for our Nashville listeners. And my mom, sister, and I were definitely one of 5 women in the entire municipal auditorium. And one of the other ladies was the speaker, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
Oh, yeah. Crazy.
And so for me, my takeaway was I am a female and I want to be in the business world. I always knew that in some way, shape, or form. And what was really impactful to me at that time was like, oh, there's not many women here. Okay, I've got to use my voice. I got to stand out. I
Interesting.
got to be
Mhm.
heard. And I think
And
that was one
what
of
an
the things.
influence Margaret Thatcher was for you.
Yes,
Gosh,
huge.
yes.
And dad, I think dad knowing too that, hey, this was a really male dominated world at the time and still is, depending on the industry that you're in, was like, listen, I definitely want you to think about this business, whether it's your first plan or your second plan, but also think about, where does business take place? And business takes place on the golf course. And so at a very early age, you're going to be playing golf because I want you to be part of those conversations, because that's where business happens.
Mhm.
And so I think that, and I've, played golf for many, many years. And I think that was also one of those moments, in a gratitude moment I have, right? Like nowadays there's, certainly more other places that business is happening, but my dad at the time saw that business happened on the golf course, and if I was going to be there and have a seat at that table, I needed to have that skill set.
The cheese has moved though a little bit, I would say. It still happens on the golf course, right, Kaden?
Yes.
Sure.
Kaden works at a golf course.
Yeah.
But it also now happens on the pickleball court,
Oh gosh.
I would say, or off the pickleball court.
Have you done
Exactly.
business on the pickleball court?
I'm still waiting for my. It's probably because I'm losing. They probably think this guy's not worth doing business with. I was gonna say it's because I'm beating them, but that's only true half the time. So I don't know, but it's funny. You've gone to several. You've sought out success type things, like you went to Passion conference several times, and I know those things like that have been impactful to you.
I think, for those entrepreneurs out there, right? I think finding those different ways to engage and learn and absorb, right? Whether it is listening to those audibles, listening to those podcasts, getting out there into the events, networking, I think it's really important. And again, it looks a little different, right, than my dad's time, but I think it's still just as important as it was back then. It's just we take our media in a little bit different way.
Yeah.
And already, taking RC with me to events and to different things is also really important. And what she sees and observes and absorbs is different than what I will see and observe and absorb. But I think it's really important to, as entrepreneurs, as you are out there in the world, to still not just give out to the world and share your message and share your story, but also to continue to receive and grow and be inquisitive, because that's how you're going to continue to learn and scale.
I was just going to say, for the listeners, I've observed Misha living this out, and just the way I've been inspired actually by the way that you have mentored both your kids, and specifically RC, because she's a little bit older. I'm seeing the influence that you're having, and the conversations that you're having, and the things that you're exposing her to are just so invaluable. And I'm really inspired by that. And I hope any listener, if they're in a position to influence, and most of us are, we don't even realize it. Just open your eyes, look around. Who in your life are you in a position to influence? Who in your life could you not just speak, but just live life with, or maybe more intentionally invite them in and into just kind of being with you and being a companion with you. It doesn't take a lot. I think we feel like we have to do big things and we have to say amazing things. It's just be yourself. You are an influence, whether you realize it or not. Just being a little bit intentional and looking for opportunities to be a mentor to others is just life changing and future changing, destiny changing, I think, for people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your kind words. And I think there are so many opportunities out there to mentor. And I think being able to give, right, is so rewarding. There's a lot of gratitude with it. It's that reciprocal nature that happens. We give, and I think it's so important. And, there's so many opportunities out there. And, Eric, you and I actually mentor within our Williamson County Schools Entrepreneur and Innovation Center, which is really fun, and getting to do that. And we've been actually mentoring some of those media students in how to do podcasting and what does that strategy look like. And that's been a great experience. And then secondarily, I also mentor within Vanderbilt, the Wondery, and working with those entrepreneurs and those founders. And, again, it's one of those ways to be able to give back and make an impact in the world. So, final thoughts, Kaden, to you as a young entrepreneur that's launching into your career. What is that one lesson that you want our listeners to remember from the conversation or what you have learned thus far in your life?
I would say just try everything you can and be as open to experiences as possible. I think Dad's done a good job of doing that with me growing up, and not necessarily going to all these events or anything, but recommending books, and just the way that he carries himself and lives is just like an example to me, I guess. And I've learned a lot just by watching him and not necessarily having those like big impactful moments. But I think over time, I've learned a lot about, entrepreneurship through him. And yeah, it's just made me, just kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit as well. And although I'm like trying to get into the business world and trying to find my way, I think, I'm creative and have this entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that everything that I've learned up to this point in my life from him will definitely pay off as I'm, trying to get into the business world. And then, I'd love to have my own business one day. So yeah, we'll definitely take everything that I've learned up to this point in my life in that. And then, I think I might follow the same path. Who knows? As dad. So yeah, I would
He'll
say
make his own way. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that, Kaden definitely has caught a lot of stuff from me. He's caught a lot of stuff from his mom. He's caught a lot of stuff from his grandparents. One thing that I'm super excited for him to do, and this is not necessarily in business, but he's caught this interest in hunting since he was little. And he's actually just, set up his own tree stand. And, as a hobby, you and my father-in-law are going to be doing some hunting this weekend for the first time as it's hunting season here in Tennessee. And it's just been fun. For me as a dad, it's just fun to see you, Kaden, come alive in how you are uniquely wired. That's always been my hope for Kaden, is that because we're all created differently. I'm not trying to create a clone of me, never ever did. I always wanted to say, okay, what is he uniquely gifted in? What are some skills and talents and interests? And let's go with those things. Fishing was another one. Just those are things that I see in him. Also, he's always been a pretty good speaker as well. I've had an interest in doing that, and always been more social. And I love going with him to these mentorship things that we've been going to, because I get to see my son come alive. And that, as a father, that's like the greatest gift for me, is to see my kids entering in and living in what makes them tick and get excited about life.
Amazing. All right, Eric, any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Those are my final thoughts. Just what I just said is just so important. Is looking for, if I were to stress anything we talked about, as a mentor, look for the people around you that are closest to you and start with them. Don't feel like that's too small. It's not. It's actually the largest and most impactful, most important thing you can do, is look for people close to you that you can, either in work or in your family, that you can invest into. And it matters what you do, how you act, how you behave. Things are caught more than they're taught. And then secondly, I would say for somebody like Kaden, or somebody who's looking to be mentored, is just what Kaden said. Emphasize the fact that just be open Have an open mind, be coachable, listen more than you talk. Just you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. Just because you might be young doesn't it's natural to be insecure or feel like have self-doubt or have a lower self-belief, but that's normal as a young person to experience that and to try to embrace that as best as you can. Be coachable and growing and learning, and you will actually grow much faster if you let go and surrender to that versus trying to show or prove that you have it all together, because that's impossible at a young age. So just be coachable and enjoy the ride, and things will go well for you if you approach it that way with that mindset.
Amazing. Fantastic nuggets that I hope our listeners have been enjoying and catching, as you said, Eric. But thank you both for being on the show. Thank you for our live mentorship of me and my technology, of my microphones. But thank you both for being on, and really excited, GSD Factor listeners, as we are kicking off season 4 of the GSD Factor podcast. And this year, the theme is stepping into your extraordinary. So tune in next week for more episodes that are going to be produced by our resident producer, Kaden Nordhoff. And thank you guys so much for being on the show. Let's get shit done.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Thank you for listening to the GSD Factor podcast. I'm your host, Misha Blameyer-Farish. Be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, as I love connecting with our listeners to hear how you are getting shit done in your personal and professional life. Be sure to visit our website at gsdfactor.com, where you can take a persona assessment that's going to help you figure out what type of GSDer you are. There's also a ton of resources and tools for both yourself and your tiny humans in your life. We appreciate you rating and subscribing our podcast episode today. And don't forget to get shit done.